So this will be our presentation on the scenario technique. My name is Lucas Betancourt, and our group is also composed by Andrew Wright and Emma Morgan.
The topic that we were given is scenario technique. And anyways, it's a strategy for planning things that organizations, they usually have a lot of things that they need to do. So they can look at all the projects and things that they need to accomplish all at once. So in it, you consider a variety of metrics, and overall, what this does is this allows you to add another layer of analysis, and it'll save you a lot of time in the future. So now, if you look at this next slide, it has Scenario Manager in Microsoft Excel. And anyways, what you can do is you can look. In this example, it has like they bought more units, if they had a higher occupancy, what the board thought should be the way to go, what Steve thought. I mean, there's just a variety of things, and you could kind of just step through each of them and see and compare them, and then make a good decision from what you have gained. And there wasn't too many articles that I found. I mean, there were a lot about like scenarios and techniques, but as far as scenario techniques applied, I only found like a couple really good ones, and this is the one I decided to go with. And anyways, it says, however, when combined with the scenario technique, biometric information narrows the so-called scenario funnel by reducing the number of possible developments in the near future. That's by Stelzer. What this does is, even though their article was about a bibliometric information, and because they coupled it with the scenario technique, it narrowed down their possibilities, and so they're able to look at plausible developments, and in the end, save them a lot of time.
Scenarios are a very powerful and frequently used elicitation technique. Because they don't deal with the how of a system, they're a great tool for defining the requirements, including the specifics of what to exclude. Through modeling and challenging assumptions about the requirements, we're better able to figure out what needs to be included that isn't yet, as well as what is currently included that's superfluous. This is considered understanding and validating requirements. We ensure that the requirements make sense and are necessary. As someone works through different scenarios, it becomes clear what the general rules are, what the exceptions are, and what needs to be addressed by the development team. Scenarios can and should get more detailed while they're being worked through to narrow down the requirements and clarify any points of confusion. This is also an easily digestible form of information. It's far more appealing to stakeholders to give specific examples of what the system should do and should not do in order to create an understanding between the stakeholders and the developers and get everyone on the same page. While scenarios are certainly important and have the potential to be incredibly useful, it's also crucial to remember that they're only as good as the work put into them. Scenarios are storyboards that don't adequately demonstrate the various aspects of the requirements will not be useful in defining those requirements. Each possible scenario needs to be explored to get an accurate picture. One problem that can arise in developing scenarios is figuring out which details to include. Scenarios that leave out too many details won't paint an accurate picture of the requirements. But if excessive details are added, or if there's a lot of redundancy, using scenarios will end up wasting valuable time and resources that could be better used elsewhere. Scenarios also tend to span the whole project and cover many requirements in a single scenario, which poses issues when trying to isolate and categorize requirements. Scenarios should not be used to figure out how a system should work, but they're very useful when trying to determine the specifications of who will be involved in using the system, what should and should not happen in each case, and why these requirements are important. This technique explains an existing system as it is and explores what the future system should look like. It's great to use in the early stages when the system requirements are still unclear to decide on important aspects of the system and lay the foundational requirements, but it's also important to keep in mind that there are many other ways to elicit information, and it's a bad idea to neglect those. Scenarios work best in conjunction with other elicitation techniques. Using scenarios when another technique would be better can be detrimental to the team and the project, so it's critical to use each technique appropriately.
So Zogel and Colling, they describe scenarios as narrative and specific descriptions of current and future processes, including actions and interactions between users and the system. So it's really interesting to gather data using scenarios because they are actually possible experiences that the users may have as they use the system. So the first example is going to be about pieces of art. This scenario displays the perfect usage of our application. So a person A owns valuable art pieces around the house. In order to use the app, any smartphone should be able to access an app store and download it. So the scenario would be the person opens the app on the smartphone. The person presses the button to create a new inventory folder. The person presses the button to create a new object on the folder. The person starts to input the information of the object. Then presses the button to take a picture of the object. The app switches to the camera mode. The person takes a picture of the object, and the app requests confirmation that the picture is visible. The person confirms that the picture is visible and saves the object on the folder. Then the steps 3 through 10 are repeated for every valuable art piece at home. Then the person closes the app and leaves the house. In this opportunity, a burglar breaks in to rob a few art pieces. The person then returns home and realizes the robbery. The person opens the app, selects the art pieces folder, checks each piece to figure out which ones were robbed, and then calls insurance and uses the inventory app to prove robbery. Now let's look at another example. This example is going to be about a woman with jewelry. So if the person inputs wrong information, there is still a way to correct it. As I said, this person owns expensive jewelry, and once again, any smartphone should be able to access an app store and download the app. The person opens the app on the smartphone, presses the button to create a new inventory folder, and presses the button to create a new object on the folder, just as the first one. The person starts to input the information of the object, but the person inputs the wrong location of the object. Then the person presses the button to take a picture of the object, and the app switches to the camera mode. The person takes a picture of the object, and the app requests confirmation if the picture is visible. The person confirms that the picture is visible and saves the object on the folder. But the person realizes that a mistake has been made. So the person selects the object and presses the edit button. The person then corrects the information of the location of the object. The person presses the button to save the changes, and the app requests for the person to confirm the action. The person confirms the changes, and finally, the person finishes adding other objects and closes the app. As for the third scenario, we'll talk about action figure collections and how the system can completely fail if the person neglects the information it should input. So in this scenario, a person collects action figures. And once again, any smartphone should be able to access an app store and download it. So in this scenario, the person opens the app on the smartphone, presses the button to create a new inventory folder, and presses the button to create a new object on the folder. The person starts to input the information of the object, but then the person inputs the wrong location. Also, the person forgets to take a picture of the object. The person presses the save button to put the object on the folder. The app informs the user that the person has forgotten to take a picture. The app asks the user if it should proceed anyway, and the person accepts and the app saves the incomplete object. The person repeats the same mistakes over and over and then closes the app. The person leaves the house and there's an accident with the action figure collection. So the person comes home, calls insurance, and when they need to provide the information that is contained within the app, the insurance refuses to accept the information because it's wrong and incomplete. These were the references that we used for our presentation. Thanks for your time.